Hey everybody, my name's Robbie Samuels, and my newest book is Small List, Bigger Results, Launch a Successful Offer No Matter the Size of Your Email List. I can't wait to talk about it. My best advice I ever received was from my mother when I was 12, which was kind of devastating news then. You're only the main character in your own play.
Devastating news. So what part's devastating? So let's break that apart, right? Main character on stage in your own play. Well, you like the stage, so I'm
Well,
guessing that wasn't it.
when
So
I was
what's devastating?
12, oh my gosh, it was in response to the fact that I wasn't invited to a birthday party. After months earlier being told I would be, a friend moved away. We lost touch. I remembered her birthday party was coming up. I didn't get an invite, and my mother doesn't remember telling this to me, but she said, "You're only the main character on your own play, like in your own stage." So the idea makes sense. It just means that we have to make a lot of effort to get other people to notice us. Now, our best friends will never be forgotten, but they didn't start out as best friends. They got on our stage over time. So if your first attempt to reach out to someone doesn't work, it's okay. You're just not on their stage yet. You got to be
Ooh,
memorable in a bigger way.
ooh. So you're not on their stage; you're on your stage. That's so
I am the main
interesting.
character only on my own
Ah,
stage.
that's really interesting. That's super interesting, right? So it's our stage, not everybody else's stage. But as we grow, right, this is how we can grow. This is how we can, for not at 12, but at maybe at our age, right, we can grow our list and grow our audience there and get on other stages, right? So how do we make that jump, right? What's the first step that you took to move from the 12-year-old Robbie stage to the 27-year-old Robbie stage, or however old you are now? We're keeping that a secret, right? So yeah.
47, not a secret.
47. Shut up. Yeah,
Proud of it.
same.
Awesome. High five. So,
Woohoo.
I have this philosophy of abundance, and it's best summed up by the idea of giving rides to the airport. You only give rides to the airport to people that you have a relationship with, and you have a resource, time and a car, and they would appreciate the favor. And if you continue to do that, people will start to know you as the kind of person who gives rides to the airport. And one day you will need a ride. And the cool part is not only will you get a ride, but it's likely from someone you've never driven because they just like the idea that you're a giver and they want to support
Oh,
you.
that's
So that's been my philosophy, is just sort of show up and add value, show up and add value, which is actually the mantra I had going in my head when March 2020 happened and everything I had been doing to add value was no longer valued.
yeah. Wow. Show up and add value. That's so simple, but yet can be so hard. So yeah. So let's talk about that, Robbie. So you were like the crown prince of offline networking, and
Which was then
then
called
what
networking.
happened? Yeah, which was then called networking. Yeah, let's be
And
clear, like
events, which were then called
networking.
events, not in-person events.
Right. Yeah. So things were very different. So let's
Very
talk
different.
about that, right? So let's talk about what the hell, man. So how did you pivot from offline to online? How did you do that? I mean, show up and add value seems simple, but give me some practical tactical stuff that I can actually do so we can
Yeah.
actually show up and add value.
So prior to the pandemic, as you mentioned, I had spent over a decade building up my expertise, my credibility as a networking expert, working with organizations to help them design more engaging conferences, and particularly working with participants on how to actualize their intentions around networking. We all say we go to conferences because of the people, we want to meet the people, and then in reality, we don't follow through. I wrote a book on this topic. I did a TEDx on this topic. I was being quoted in publications. It was great. And then March 2020, okay, wait, no one needs eye contact, business card, shaking hands, and body language advice right now, except 6 feet away is like the advice. So I was stumped March 9th, 10th, 11th, got kicked in the butt by my peer mastermind. Thank you to them. And they were like, hey, you don't think of networking as something that only happens at conferences, at events. You've built a global network over the last 5 years. So I went away and then wrote 9 ways to network in a pandemic, which I shared on March 12th. And then which got, good reception because it was very relevant for the moment. And March 13th, I hosted my first virtual happy hour. And that was really just me looking at the list of things I was suggesting and thinking I should do one of these. And I've hosted a virtual happy hour, which became the No More Bad Zoom virtual happy hour every Friday since, which is now going on like 19 plus months. And while I never charged for that, that led to a ton of new ideas and a lot of new revenue streams. And I grew my business from 0 to 6 figures in 8 months last year. It became a thriving 6-figure company. And now I am a virtual event design consultant and executive Zoom producer, helping organizations strategically bring their events online with less stress and greater participant engagement. And I think I will say that it worked because I'm also a business strategy coach, and I treated myself like a client, trying to figure out how to follow the best practices I would have coached someone to do, and then doing them.
Wow. Okay, so let's break that apart. That's a
Sure.
big chunk full there, full of goodness and full of stuff. So first, you had a network, but they probably weren't your buyers, right? I mean, they weren't people, or at least that you didn't think they were. Is that right, Robbie?
Well, I wasn't trying to sell them virtual events for sure.
Yep.
I wasn't known for that. I was helping. Yeah, I was not my network of fellow consultants, coaches, speakers, etc. were not um, directly my clients. Maybe I did some things here and there, helping people launch a podcast or a book or something, but I didn't have an offer. And I've run coaching programs, so some of those folks were in my coaching programs, but I had never fully developed my practice as a business growth strategist. It was more of a on the side part of my business. I got hired by a company. I worked with them for a year and a half, so I got a lot of practice working with dozens of different kinds of entrepreneurs. And that was what I was in the middle of in 2020, was working with those clients while my own business, first imploded like all of ours did, and then rebuilt. And so, you know what happened, Phil? People started to reach out to me in March and April for coffee chats within like a week or two of me hosting that first virtual happy hour. And then they were asking me, well, how do you do this with Zoom? How do you do that with Zoom? Can I pick your brain? I realized I could spend the rest of the year having coffee chats, which my extrovert brain was very happy to do. Or I could realize, like, wait, these are research calls. What do people actually need? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And what do they actually need solved? Like, they think the problem is X, but I know the bigger problem. And so I used that information to create my first pilot, which was a 4-week program that became a 4-week certification program. And that launched in May. So by mid-April, 4 weeks after March 13th, I had 15 people signing up for a 4-week program, $500 a piece. And the first session went so well, I decided I would do it again. And I filled it 4 months in a row. And here's the thing I want to remark on. Phil, there was nothing on my website about it for the first 20 people who bought. And the second 20 people who bought, it was my rudimentary web skills made a static homepage not pretty. I didn't have a new website. Nothing was perfectly branded. But the people who bought from me already knew, liked, and trust me. So they weren't going to my website. They were happy to get a Google Doc that explained things, email. It all worked.
Wow. Wow. So pandemic led to coffee chats, which was kind of a laboratory, if you will, for discovery and helping people out. Like you, I'm an extrovert, and yeah, I pick my brain. Yeah, I'm one of those people. Yeah, okay, what do you need, right? How can I help? But I think your change there and your change of mindset really helped. You started looking for the real problems,
Right.
not just people don't know how to use Zoom. Because frankly, I mean, now that we're 18, 20 months in, if you don't know how to use Zoom, you're probably never going to know how to use Zoom.
Right.
I mean, right? I mean, you chose not to use Zoom unless you just, unless you're Rip Van Winkle and been asleep for the last 10 years. So with that, let's talk about that, because you no website, really no list, no anything, but no like trust. Talk to me about one of those coffee chats, Robbie, because I did not take you up on any of those, though we had a few chats in there. Tell me, like, talk to me about like the structure of that. How did that become a discovery call instead of just a coffee call?
So I have this philosophy that events are about content and connection. And once virtual events became synonymous with events, I knew we still needed that. So that was the angle I was coming at this with. It wasn't that I wanted to be technically proficient around Zoom. It's that I wanted that to be true so I could create engaging online experiences. That the way we'd been doing virtual prior to the pandemic was the typical webinar, 45 minutes of death by PowerPoint, followed by ineffectual Q&A and no one moderating chat, which was never a great format and was definitely not going to be great now that suddenly we were being isolated in our own homes. So people would get on a call with me and they would come thinking, I need to know how to set up a poll, set up breakout rooms. And I would say, sure you do, but have you thought about why you're using this? What is the end goal you're trying to create? How can we create some connection? How can we create engagement? And then I started to experiment. I mean, part of it was my weekly event gave me a lot of opportunity to test things. I went to a lot of other people's events and learned what I liked and didn't like as a participant. But there's this key moment I just want to say. I do a lot of coffee chats. I love getting to connect with colleagues. I'm always happy to meet with people. I used to give away hour worth of free advice, like easily. You and I are the same. Love to help people. If I know it, I'm going to give it away. Right? Philosophy of abundance. But that hour did never translated to clients. It never really helped them solve their problem. It led them. Best case scenario was they walked away with a notebook full of notes that they'd scribbled, no strategy, just a bunch of tactics. And then they didn't get around to implementing them, and they can't read their notes, and weeks go by, and then they see me online or see me in person, and they're embarrassed because they didn't take action. And they want to figure out what their notes mean, but they don't want to ask me because I've already been so generous. So they end up hiring somebody else to help them implement. And I've had that happen. I've talked to lots of entrepreneurs who've had that happen. So here's what I created to avoid that. And thankfully, I had this in place before the pandemic. There's a moment in the conversation, Phil, when I realized that my brain is just exploding with ideas for them. We've already shared a few. We're already down that road. And I say, I have so many ideas for you because you sound a lot like the clients that I work with. Hey, do you want to hear what it'd be like for us to work together? And that like permission based, let's have a chat. I've never been turned down. Clients who do this have never been turned down in that moment because it's just risk free. And the next piece then is don't then pitch your program. I then share a story about a client that they make me think of. And in particular, I focus on the outcome. I'm like, I worked with this client. This is what they were looking to do. Here's what they were able to do at the end of the time we worked together. Is that what you're looking for? Getting their buy-in about the outcome. And then, it really just leads itself into a sales call. And I never pressure people to buy from me. I'm like, it might be the right fit. It might not be the right fit. I can refer you to someone. If it's over $5,000 offer, I don't even want their yes in the call. They didn't expect to hire me in that moment. They wasn't actually prepped that way. But that has helped me shift the conversation and set up the parameters where like I am a coach and they might be a client. And the same thing for research calls. Like I'm not focusing on research calls being about a pitch. It's really understanding what people need and asking them questions and trying to help them start to realize the difference between what I call in the book, the little p problems, the symptoms, and what I know is the actual problem, the big P problem.
Wow, that's great. I love that question too, because that is so risk free, right? Do you want to hear what it'd be like to work together? Which is a good shift and is an honest shift and is not a here's my offer, buy it, or I'm gonna yak on you and use NLP to mind screw you over, right? This is just really an honest conversation
Yep.
about how we can work together. So I like that, Robbie. So wow. So let's talk about that, right? So one of the things that I like that you did in the book that I thought was super powerful is you talked about goal setting in ways that I haven't thought about goal setting. Maybe I haven't heard about it, but powerful stuff. So let's start with your distinction between major and minor goals, so folks can understand that, because that was kind of different to me, at least the way you talked about it.
So I used to, when I first started my business, try to move everything forward at once. I would get like 5 ideas and just incrementally be moving them forward. And at the end of the year, you're not done with anything, and which doesn't make sense. So I want to work to completion on things, and there's an order of operations, because if I do certain things in advance, then it will prep things to be making the next goal easier, right? Stacking your successes. So major goals, writing a book is a major goal, right? Now there are pieces to writing a book. Rebranding your website is a major goal, but there are pieces. So let's just start with the website one for a second. Let's say you want to have a new goal, a new website in the next 6 months. So 1 quarter, which I now think of as 12-week sprints, and we can talk about that in a minute, but you can focus on one aspect of that. It could be content. It could be getting your photos done, right? It could be researching other sites to see what you like, getting all those pieces in play. And then the next quarter, it could be hiring someone to actually implement it. So the same thing with the book. Like there's the writing of the book, and then there's the launching of the book, and there's the branding, and there's all these separate pieces. So minor goals are either one-off things, like I need to update my LinkedIn profile to match what I actually do. And by the way, I'm realizing as I'm saying this that I actually need to do that. I have a new book, and I've been so focused on getting the book out there. It's not on my website. It's not on my LinkedIn yet, right? But it's like pre-launch. It's the perfect time. So that's a minor goal. I've got to just like get that done. But it's part of this bigger thing around launching a book. So I try to have no more than 2 major goals per 12-week sprint, and usually 2 or 3 minor goals that are like, it's more than a quick cross off the list. It usually takes a little bit more research, a little more effort, but it sets up what I want to do later in the year. And I'm also now careful to place things later in the year. So if I get a really good idea, I try to move it downfield a bit. So I'm not like, I have to do this right now. It's like, well, no, I didn't rebrand my website until Q1 2021. Now, I grew the business to 6 figures before I did that. Having a new website wasn't necessary. And if I'd focused on the new website, I would have, lost opportunities because of having to focus my attention on one thing. I can't focus on everything else. So I didn't need it because I was selling to my direct network. I need it now because I'm starting to expand to sell beyond my immediate network. And that's where it's helpful to have all that branding. But initially, to pilot, here's the 4 things you need to pilot: content that people want to learn, people who want to learn the content, a way to communicate the content to them, and a way for them to pay you. That's it. You don't need websites, landing pages, the perfect logo, business cards, SEO, Facebook ads, learning management systems, videos. You don't need any of that. And if you focus on all that other stuff, you may build a course that no one wants to buy.
Wow. Okay, so before we go into sprint goals, I want to talk about what you just said there. You got 4 things here: content that people want, right? People that want the content and
Right.
want to buy the content, right? Want to buy, and truly, I also say they want access to you, right? They want it from you. That's the other thing, right? That's why it's your network. A way to communicate that. So that could be video, could be audio, could be, right, whatever
Could be a
way.
text. Could be a daily
Could be a
text.
text. Yep. Yep. And then a way to pay, which with PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or
Keep it
Wave
simple.
apps or whatever, right? Keep it simple. Heck, people can write you a check and mail it to you, right?
They can.
That's super easy, and there's no excuses there. I think about that. If we back up even further, right? I would say step 0 is understand what the problems are
Right.
that
Well,
you
yeah, of
want to
course.
solve.
That's all
That
the.
you're no, right.
Oh,
But
that's
I think
right.
that's important, right? Because some
Yeah.
people jump ahead of that. So on these discovery calls, right? Find out those problems, listen
Yeah.
strong to those problems, and then get your butt in gear and do the 4 steps that Robbie just said, right? Content, people, communicate, and pay. That's it. That's simple. So with that, is that do you think that it's realistic for someone else that's not Robbie Samuels to do this in a 12-week sprint? And talk to me about why it's 12 weeks. Because I think I'm looking around my office here. I think I've got 12-week year here somewhere. But talk to me about those sprint goals too, because I think that's super important.
So I had someone describe to me the 12-week year, and I was like, oh, I need to read this book. This sounds a lot like what I do. Um, Here's one thing I want to say about 12-week sprints, which is different than quarterly goals. I used to love quarterly goals, and I built my business based on quarterly goals. The idea that I wanted to work to completion one quarter and then another and another. So otherwise, when I had annual goals, I would get to the end of the year and not know why it wasn't working. Like
Mm.
I didn't know whether I put enough effort. I didn't know if I had the wrong strategy. I didn't know. Whereas if you focus energy on 12 weeks, it's easier to like reflect and figure out like what do you have to shift. And because things all work in tandem, if one thing doesn't work, and then you're not going to move on to the next goal, right? You're going to have to finish this one or revise what that success looks like. The 12-week sprint model is, I found with quarterly goals, I never had a break in between. I literally, there was no time where I wasn't supposed to be working. Like, how do you take a week off if you only have 12 weeks on something? And it just felt like burnout. Like it's just like a steady beat. So the 12 weeks happen, and then there's 4 weeks in between. And so in the book, I describe sort of how to use that time. But now I'm forgetting what your actual question was.
No, so okay, so no, so 12 weeks, right? You gave us
Yeah.
4 steps there.
Yeah.
content, people,
Oh, can I do
communicate,
that in
and
12
pay.
weeks?
Yeah,
Yes.
can you do that in 12 weeks?
So here's the thing you have to do. And everyone says, oh, it takes so much time. I don't think people realize how much time they're spending trying to build something. I'm just using an online course as an example. People are all the time come to me and say, like, I don't know which content to put in my online course and what to leave out and what to call it. And I'm like, has anyone bought from you? No. I'm like, okay, wait a second. Like, have you talked to people? Who are you serving? Well, I have this vague idea, like, people, leaders. I'm like, entrepreneur. I'm like, this is very vague. So my premise is go and talk to the people in your network who already know, like, and trust you. And I have an exercise in the book called Wake Up Your Network, right? It really walks you through how to do this. It could take you 6 weeks to talk to 20, 25 people that you've identified who would recognize your name. You'd love to hear from out of the blue. You've already identified that you have a strong connection. They have they have some influence and they have some interest. And so you schedule these chats and you use that time to learn what they need. So it's a mixture of likely prospects and likely referral partners and maybe some fellow experts in there. And so that's how you find out what the problems are that they think they have. You go away, you take this time to analyze the problem language, which I also walk people through. And by the way, there's workbooks available to anyone who gets the book. They can actually go to your special link, Phil, robbiesamuels.com/Phil, to get the book and the toolkit. But they really kind of take the time to understand language around what people need and then decide, okay, I'm going to put together what I think is the outcome of my pilot, which really is like a promise. If you do the work, this isn't an outlier. This isn't like some people, everybody who does the work is going to get this information or this knowledge or this ability. And then you go back to a dozen of the people that you had talked to and you say, hey, want to run this past you? Here's the outcome. What do you think? And then they either tell you, you're in my head, you're reading my journal, or no, it doesn't land for me at all. And then you say, well, here's the outline of how I'm thinking of doing that over 4 or 5 or 6 sessions weekly, It's a group. And then they give you feedback and you're like, well, you know what? It sounds like it's a fit for you. And I reached out because I thought you'd be a great fit for this pilot. I'd love you to join. What do you think? And at this point, they basically told you they need this. Like, it's what they want. And so the price is going to be something, but it's going to be a lot less than what the full program will be eventually. And in response, they're going to get some to kind of co-create it with you, and you're going to get feedback, and it's a win-win. And that's the point, co-creation. So can you do all that in 12 weeks? Yes. Probably I would say 3 months might be a little tight for people who have other demands in their life. If it's what you're focused on, I have definitely seen clients do this in a tight time frame. They just get on it. It doesn't happen always as quick because people delay setting up the calls. They delay doing the analysis. They give themselves lots of roadblocks. But honestly, even if it took you 6 months, which is I think that's more than enough time, it saves you so much time because you're not going to go build something that no one wants to buy. You know, as you build it, that there's people waiting for it. And that was true for it's very meta to talk about this because my book was the same way. The book I designed was with other people. People were clamoring. People were asking me, where's the advanced copy? I was like, it's coming out this week. They're like, oh, sorry, I thought it was today. I'm like, I'm on a lot of launches and I never know when the advanced copy is coming. Like, I'm never that aware of it. So it really, really is so helpful to know as a content creator that the audience was built before I create the offer.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? When I'm coaching folks, I do the same thing, right? I'm like, so have you ever sold any before? Anybody ever asked for this? Well, no, but I thought it'd be a great course. For who? For you? If it's a great course for you, then go ahead and build it, but don't try to sell it. That's not going to help anybody. You have to know what you're helping. And I think, yeah, that's why I wanted to back that up, right? Because I think so much of this, right? People hear, oh, content. Okay, I can write something. People, cool. I got 100 people on LinkedIn I'm connected to. A way to communicate. Oh, sure. Yeah, I can email people. I got a Gmail account. Pay? Okay, send me a check. Are you solving any problems? Does anybody care, right? Does it matter? And I love that you're giving away that Wake Up Your Network. Because I have to tell you, Robbie, that is such a valuable thing. I've got a different way that I look at my network, but yours is super awesome, man. I dig the Wake Up Your Network handout. So let's talk a bit more about that, because I think that's one that folks miss. And Robbie has been generous enough to give us a copy of that. If you go to robbiesamuels.com/Phil, if you can remember me, hi, that's me, Phil, right? You can get a copy of the workbook and the whole toolkit. So, Robbie, let's talk about that, right? So, wake up your network. I'm connected to, let's pretend, 1,000 people on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Now our goal is to wake it up. So take me through, what does that mean to wake up our network, and then give us some practical, tactical stuff we can actually do so that when we get that, we're not totally surprised.
Well, I have a belief that 80% of the people you need to know to be successful, you've already met. That's not scientific. That is my belief, but it follows the 80-20 rule, and I think it follows for what I've experienced. So networking is not about going out to events and like spraying and praying your business card around. It's about you reaching out to the people who already have a connection to you, but we naturally sort of resist doing that. And so part of the wake up is also for yourself, mentally, to recognize that you have the resources that you need to be successful. You just need to ask for the help that you need. So part of being a giver is knowing when to ask. So we need to do both sides of that. So the first step is you download, let's say we're using LinkedIn. It could be your Instagram. It could be your text messages from the last 3 years, whatever list you want to use. But for argument's sake, you can actually download your list from LinkedIn. And then the first pass through, you add a column and you put an X in the column if the person would recognize your name and if you would like to hear from them out of the blue. That's it. Quick instinct. You just run through the list of names. And if you want to get really tactical, I would do the Pomodoro method, set a clock for 15 minutes, and then get through as much as you can and decide at the end of 15 minutes whether you want to do another 15 minutes or take a break. And that's how you can kind of move through. After you've got now this smaller list, which is probably still fairly large, you can then add 3 new columns. One is connection, influence, and interest. So connection, influence, and interest. So for those 3 columns, you're going to put a 1, a 2, or a 3 being highest. So how strongly connected are you? Influence, don't overthink it. You're not researching this, but I'll give you the example that my mother could introduce me to someone who was a kid that would be a perfect match for me, right? My mother could make that direct connection, but she doesn't have a platform. So she can't introduce me to lots of people who are going to be excited about my work. You have a platform, Phil. You have influence. So I have to decide, is it a 3 influence, 2 influence? And it really depends on what stage you're on. Like if you're trying to speak globally, that's a different stage than if you're trying to connect with people in your region or your town. So your local chamber president probably has a lot of influence locally, but maybe not globally. And then last is interest. How interested would they be about the topic you are currently wanting to talk about? Now that's going to change 6 months from now, a year and a half from now, 4 years from now, which is why this list will continue to be helpful, even though you might snooze some people. So snoozing them means that after you've done these 3 things, you look at these lists and you're like, well, if they score a 4 or less, I'm not going to reach out to them right now. And so in that case, you would put a Z instead of the X. You'd switch it and you'd sort of drop. You don't want to lose them, but you just drop them to the bottom of the list. And the people who are remaining either fall into likely prospect, likely referral partner, which includes fellow experts, or a coffee chat. And from that list, you then have to decide who are the 20 or 25 people that you're going to talk to in the next 6 weeks. And my recommendation is that 2/3 of those calls be with likely prospects, because we naturally gravitate towards talking to colleagues, but those colleagues aren't buyers. So we want to make sure we have people who are likely prospects in that mix, so that you're building a runway so that by the time you release and launch that offer, there are people waiting for it. If we do all of our building our idea, our strategy, our solution in secret, right, in a silo, then no one knows about it. And when we go to launch it, it's like launching a plane. Now listen, if you have a huge list, if you're a Dari Clark and you have a huge list, you can launch without all that buildup because people have been following you for so long. Like you've been naturally doing this, and then you have a helicopter. But if you don't have tens of thousands of people, which is most of us, on your email list, then you really want to do this nurturing to draw people in to have conversations.
Wow. And I would say you need 0 list for this. You don't need any email list. I really think it's important to hear that, right? That's why the book is about small list, because I will tell you, Robbie, between me and you, nobody else is listening. Between us, I chucked my list away a couple years ago because I wasn't wasn't responding. It wasn't doing that. It's not that I didn't connect. In fact, I love to connect. I just realized that wasn't the list that I wanted to build. So I focused my energy on LinkedIn. Well, now that LinkedIn, you can't download connections, and not that I would ever tell anyone to download and put that on an email list. But now that you can't do that, I still have a list of 0. But your tip here about how we can wake up our network is so good. It's so good. And if you can't, you can export from just about any platform you're on, which I think people need to understand, right? If you're not sure, just Google export friends Facebook, export followers Instagram. You might have to pay $10 or $100 to export it. Some are harder than others, but that's your folks, right? And if you're like, well, I don't recognize anybody on here, start over.
Yeah.
Like that's what I had to do, right? Like for real, that's what I had to do. I had nobody on my list that I wanted to talk to. I had nobody on my list. They were all people from a lifetime ago instead of from right now, because I didn't do a good job of making an offer before. So talk about that, Robbie, because you're talking about people that are clamoring to get your stuff. How soft or how strong does this offer have to be in order to even get a coffee chat with you?
Well, they recognize your name and you'd be happy to hear from them out of the blue. The only reason you haven't talked is because neither one of you reached out. Why not do them a favor and be the one who reaches out? I mean, just get over it. If you're putting it about yourself, you're never going to make the impact in the world you want to have. It's not about us.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. I love that. Yep. And I figured you're going to say something like that, and I dig that, and I think that's super important. And we could talk. I mean, Robbie, we could spend the next 2 hours talking about this. The book is great, but I've got one more thing I want to ask you about before we go, and that is, you talked about learning again. I love the way you look at things. Just in time versus just in case.
Yeah.
Such a different way of thinking about learning. So take us through just in time versus just in case and how this helps us, or maybe not so much.
So this is a great concept because particularly when you're first starting out as an entrepreneur, you just want to consume every bit of information, knowledge, learning. And it's overwhelming, and it's not strategic, it's not focused. And I found myself doing that, and I got excited about every shiny object. Every shiny object got me excited. And I fortunately learned about this concept of just in case versus just in time. So when I was ready to work on a podcast, which is now like 6.5 years ago, I focused on learning how to launch a podcast, and I pushed aside all the other things that were coming into my inbox and coming into my podcast feed, because I had finally decided this is the thing I want to do. And so that is just in time learning. Just in case learning is when you're like, well, maybe one day I will have a mastermind, so I want to learn about that. But you're not like on the precipice of having a mastermind. It's just like an idea you have. I think that that's a great thing to do, but to focus it not during your 12-week sprints. I actually have a week during my 4 weeks in between sprints where all the, I don't know, like, how like we have this like stack of books next to our bed that we want to read.
Yeah.
Maybe not anymore because we don't read physical books. Yeah. So it's the metaphorical stacks of books that we get to consume. That's all just in case reading. It could be replays of, video content that you signed up for. All those virtual summits that we bought for $99. It could be podcast episodes that are a little off topic. It could be taking a course on something that would be creative and stimulate your mind. But do that off cycle. And it does. I really do think we get things from the sort of external edges of our network. Like, I think innovation does come from the outside often. So it's useful, but it could be distracting. And another version of this concept is noble obstacles, which I learned from John Acup's book, Finish, that sometimes we get hooked on an idea that sounds plausible, like that seems worth it. But it really, like building a new website in 2020 for me would have been a noble obstacle. Like thinking I needed the website in order to launch an offer would have been impeding my ability. And I want to just point out that 40 people got to go through the experience. Dozens got certified as certified virtual event professionals. Several of those people went on to launch their own businesses as Zoom producers, including me contracting with them to support my event clients. So I wouldn't have been able to do any of that if I was building a website for 6 months. And that is a noble obstacle. Like, you've got to learn. Those are harder for me to recognize. And I'm saying it out loud because I got constantly got vigilant. But sometimes you need, this is why we coaches need coaches, to kind of call us on, like, are you avoiding doing the biz dev? Are you avoiding doing the follow up? Are you avoiding doing the client like work? Because you need that right now. Like, I think we need coaches to hold the mirror up to us. But yeah, I think it's totally possible to get so much done if we build strategic plans. And I love that you're bringing up this part of the book, because a lot of people jump to just like, the how do you build the offer part. But if we don't have the right mindset, and that's the first section of the book, it doesn't matter what content I give you. You're not going to consume it and you're not going to follow through on it. So throughout the book, actually, I keep weaving back to mindset, because we will reach different plateaus and get stuck. It will continue to happen. And for me, I hit that point. I almost built I wrote about it in the book. I've almost built an entirely new business. And it was because I couldn't envision how to go around the corner from where I was with my current business. Like, and I had a coach who said, like, what are you doing there? And I was like, oh yeah, wow. And so I hired the coach and got the work done, and good things have happened since. So yeah, coaches need coaches.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great stuff. Robbie, you are giving us the Big Results Toolkit, which includes Wake Up Your Network. Go to robbiesamuels.com/Phil. Just sign up. You get it. I got it. It's fantastic. It's super helpful. Lots of good stuff in there. But Robbie, if we want to get started, we've got no list. We've got no money. We're like, oh crap. I've been delaying because I've got all these noble causes, but I'm going to finally, right now, I heard Robbie's voice and I'm like, ooh, I'm finally going to move forward. What's the very first step or two that people should take to actually get started and get activated so they can actually do what they want to do? So they can start with that small list and get big results.
The book is 99
Well, of course. Yeah. Then get the book.
I was going to say,
yeah, let's
no
be clear.
money.
Get the darn book, right?
Invest
It's a book.
in yourself. 99
cents.
If
it sucks, yes, email me. I'll send you $1. I'm serious. That's my guarantee.
It's pre-launch. It's not even out yet.
Yeah.
It's pre-launch.
It is out. I downloaded it this morning.
Yeah.
It is
officially out October 31st, because the difference between the publication date and the launch date. So it's pre-launch, but it's available for 99 cents. And so yes, get that and read it and internalize it. There's an exercise in that book, though, that I want to call attention to, called Discover Your Ideal Client. And I think it could, if you're not sure where to go or like what skills can you sell, I think it's really helpful. It's a Venn diagram. It has one circle is expertise, one is passion, and the other is impact and income. So both together. And in the middle is your ideal clients, the person who wants the information that you are expert in, that you are passionate about, to the point you would give it away for free, and they see the value in what you can offer them so much so that they want to pay you. That is your ideal client. And so it's sort of a good way to see that and also recognize some of the pitfalls if you only have 2 out of the 3. So I think that's a really good exercise. And one of the bonus content in the Big Results Toolkit is an hour-long replay of a masterclass I did on that concept back in 2018, which is when I first started working on the book. I did a series of free masterclasses and really was workshopping and co-creating, even back then, the content that was in this book. I ended up shelving the book because it felt to me like certain sections were a little bit vague. It would say things like, and then go talk to your network. And I spent the next 3 years developing the processes and the steps and teaching it so that I could hand people a workbook and be like, follow these steps. So that's the difference.
Love that. Love that. So Robbie, the book is Small List, all about small list, big results, right? Launch a successful offer. Even if I would say, even if your list is 0, but no matter the size of your list, small list, big results. It's $1 on the Kindle. If you go to Robbie's website, you can get his toolkit. You can get notified when this baby's ready.
It is ready. They can get it right now. I mean, like, they go to that website, they can go get it.
Yeah, you can get that right now. Yep, you can get it right now. But if you're like, no, I don't have time now. Okay, fine. Get the darn toolkit. Like, take some time. Go get Robbie's book. It's $1. My promise to you, friends, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this replay, whenever you get it, if you spend $1 on Robbie's book and it doesn't help you, message me, send me an email. I will send you $1. I'll buy you another book for $1 because I believe in this book. And I don't do this. I want to be really clear.
Wow.
I don't normally do this. Robbie, I think the book is amazing. I love the
Thank you.
book. For real, man. I mean it. So folks, take the time. You owe it to yourself.
I'm
Get the
excited
book.
to see what
Get
action
Robbie's
people
Kill.
take. Like
Yeah,
I'm
me
super
too.
jazzed to see the action people take, the possibilities that arise because of that, the people that they're going to impact. I mean, it's sort of like me getting out of my way and then 40 people's lives changed, right? So this think about how that's going to happen year over year because you decide to finally move forward. It's I'm surrounded by such smart people, and I can't wait for them to like put that out into the world in a different way, powerful way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, friends, go get Small List Big Results. Go to robbiesamuels.com/Phil, get your free toolkit, and get in gear. Discover your ideal client, get the book. It's $1. You're worth it. The book is worth it. And the action is invaluable. Thanks so much, Robbie. Great stuff,
Thank you,
man.
Phil.
My pleasure. Thank you.